Cool, so my talk's going to be mostly about SMS-2FA. A lot of acronyms in this talk, I should warn you in advance. I will expand every single one of them. If you're curious, the scene in the background is after Tony Stark got he was clever, he made a suit and hit his face in the wall. Cool. Alright, that's still showing. That's my secret URL. That's fine. Alright, so yeah, again, hey, I'm Jacky. I'm a software engineer at Lyft. I used to work at Clef, Shutterstock, and a bunch of other little places. There's words there. I like video games, books, and I write a lot on my website. So a little bit more background on me. I have personal goals. One of my biggest ones is the decolonization of computer science and technology in general. Also, not really related to talk, but things I talk on, establishment of generational wealth for people who have been ripped with that for centuries in the past. To quote the Black Panthers, liberations for all oppressed peoples and proper recognition of every single Latinx country. I was asked recently if I'm actually Latino. I'm like, yes, Haiti is one of the five countries, or one of the countries of the five. I said, people need to do homework. I'll just say that. All right, so, okay, cool. Right, so this talk is largely based on a blog post I've written a while ago after someone pretty visible said some pretty visible things that hit the fan in a really weird way. That led, these are the points I'll go on. So D-Rick and Kissen, a teacher in Baltimore, well, he came to Baltimore for a period of time. His social media and email accounts were taken over by a remote right-wing hacker, and he posted some really lewd things. The approach that he took here was to do this thing called spoofing, where he called his telecom provider, pretended to be him, took over his SMS abilities, which allowed him to reset the passwords on his accounts, which is like basically having a skeleton key to your life. That's one thing you should really digest. So if you're emailed, anybody can do anything for life. Banking, tax returns, health, everything's gone, which leads to Ponzi. Cool. Right, so spoofing, yeah. Yeah. So the specific steps that the person took was kind of interesting. So the only thing you need to verify yourself over the phone with your telecom provider is the last 4 digits of your social and really your name. Assuming everything else is okay, they will, if you're in the same city typically where you set up your service or where you typically call from, they won't raise any flags. You can just go through. There's no screening, no checking your voice, making sure none of that stuff. This person was able to take SPII, sensitive personal identifiable information, stuff that you shouldn't share, like maybe your full social security number, the current address at which your service is located, the IMEI, the International Mobile Electronic. It's a number that is unique to your cell phone devices that have been tracking across the world. This person was able to de-associate the SIM card in their phone with this IMEI and associate it with a different device. At that point, all the calls, messages, voicemails, texts, signal, even access you can read is distributed to this device. Ooh, screensavers. Don't like those. Cool. Yeah, with that in hand, they were able to get through everything, which led to a very familiar scene. With the keys, you have access to the door. So with that phone, you can now reset any account. Let's say there's somebody who works in government, which actually did happen to the FTC's CTO, acronyms, told you. His account was hacked using a SMS time approach. What happened to D-Ray at this point? This person now had control of what was once Twitter's recovery process. In order for you to log in, you'd have to enter username and password, which is also another thing I'll come back to. And the code you would receive upon text message confirmation. With that, the person had all the DMs, faves, tweets, could post anything you want, which led to his account being in this particular state. At this point, his voice was kind of lost. Take it from there. Which then procured these tweets. I don't know if anybody kind of saw what I was up. It was really weird at the time. D-Ray's face was very similar to, oh, the GIF already played, so you had to see it in its full because it's a great GIF. Well, no puppies are harmed, but it's still good to see. Yeah, I know, it's so sad. And then, God, somebody's yeah. So, okay, cool. Wait, why are you going one extra? Why are you going one extra? Okay, this intermittent slide is not showing. Basically, the one thing that could have been used to prevent this from happening is this things called PSKs or pins. So how many people here actually use Sprint? None? One? Okay, so you're actually safe. Two people are safe. Verizon? So y'all need to set that up. AT&T? You need to set it up. T-Mobile?
Yeah.
You need to set it up. Cricket? Anybody use Cricket? Straight Talk? Boost Mobile? All right, okay. I get nothing pretty good.
Project 5.
Project, okay. I wonder now. Actually, you should be good because you're using Google account. So Sprint's the only company so far, well, outside of Project 5 by way of broadband.net, that automatically requires you to set up a PIN. So whenever you do try to log into your account, you have to use this PIN that's already shared. It's not done, but it's done over the phone when you register. With T-Mobile, Sprint, everybody else, you have to set up a customer care password or something of that same nature. It's not done for you by default because the experience where it's like, oh, I have to remember my phone number and my account number, my social security number, these pins, all these little things you have to keep track. Yeah, this is gonna happen. All these things to keep track of over time. Yeah. So yeah, basically, I just kind of explained that. Right, and the bigger thing here is that your phone serves as like a T0 or a tier 0 account. Again, like it's like the bottom block in the Jenga stack. If you pull that, everything kind of falls apart. And it's hard to kind of put everything back afterwards. Oh, that's what I was looking for. Okay. Enable your telecoms PC. You can ask me more about that afterwards. I'll tell you like how you can get that set up. Now, back into the juicier, deeper stuff. And it's going to require like a lot of jargon expansion. So 2FA is yet another way of saying MFA, which stands for multi-factor authentication. People tend to produce it as an alternative form to authentication. And stepping back a little bit. So authentication is the act of confirming that you and a service provider can confirm identity. That's the underlying part of authentication and authorization. 2FA or MFA comes to expand on that. It's like something you have, this microphone, versus something I know, like my name, versus something I can produce, which may be like a nonce, a generated random number, or things of that nature. It has to be things that are unique between you and the service provider, which then creates identity. The slides also available online. These are links out to, one, the EFF's information on how 2FA works in more detail, and also a website that confirms like if your provider actually supports 2FA in different formats. So when you have 2FA, and if the big explosion of startups, you have 2FA as a service, and if you kind of chop off the F and A, you just have like authentication as a service. It gets weird, which is why you never really hear it. So these are a few services and tools you can use to introduce 2FA into apps from the client and provider side. Duo and Authly provide integration for your platforms and tools to just simply go through. This blue box here and the Google, I call it blue box, I'll come back to that. LastPass, the Fedora project, and Google all have client apps to use, and Clef provides a 2FA project out the way. This is going to be a real test. I will not put anybody to have the answer. There's two of these clients on the screen that are open sourced. Can you guess which one of these are? No. The blue one by Fedora and the Google Authenticator one. They decided just to give it away and make it easier. And that's largely because there are some of the people who gave more contribution to the thing called HAT. It's acronyms, they're everywhere. The bigger thing about MFA and the reason why 2FA is used is it's easy to use. You don't have to set it up. You kind of have it out of the box. It's in your pocket everywhere you go. And most of the time, you're already sending messages. At Lyft, we tell you when your car's coming, when you lift, when you miss your line, and little things of that nature. And it's just really straightforward. But the United States National Institute of Security, Science and Technology said that's probably the worst way to go. I'm not gonna read that big block of text, but it's basically saying like, if you already use MS, like SMS or simple messaging services, to send these messages across, it's probably the worst way to go. It's not hard to intercept text messages or calls in general to get this code, which then begins the whole cycle where your Twitter account gets hacked. They are suggesting that we use these alternative tools called secure tokens. So secure tokens are hardware devices that just have a little thing called a T-frame, which is like a really tight and secure way to generate numbers on the fly, so they can ensure that this number that you generate with you and your partner is always intact. There are really small little key things you can have in your pocket. This one actually in particular, I can just tap it against my phone, so it can always generate it, and if for some reason I want no one to get my phone, I just snap this in half and it's open, I can know what to get through it. Also, if I break this, then I'm kind of assed out as well, so there's a little balance there as well. Yeah, that last paragraph is actually kind of a considered way to go. If you had your house key, and the house key itself kind of morphed every, let's say, 30 seconds, and your lock responded to that morph, you can consider a secure token to be that. And that's like one of the lower tier of its capabilities. All right, so cool. I'm personally a developer, so I can tell you how 2FA can work for people. It's a level of security, it makes things more comfortable, and it can also be an alternative to using passes altogether. As a designer, it's probably one of those boons because that's like 3 or 4 views if less. You don't have to create a recovery password page. You don't have to create like a sign-up page. Just kind of a passive flow. 2FA.org has more detail on how it can go. And a good friend of mine at somewhere I used to work wrote 2 posts about how you can convince your product managers to get in there, because product managers don't like new features that we suggest. They like their features, unless you're working in an engineering company, then a little different. And typically, when the best time it is to add 2FA to projects they work on, which is right now. Cool. So that's actually one of the core tenets. A lot of security experts like Bruce Schneider, Matthew Mitchell in New York, they always praise the fact that security should be invisible. It's not something you should feel like interact with. Like you feel secure when you go home. You feel secure that your macaroni and cheese is good in the fridge when you close the door because it works the way you expect it to. So implementation is always a little bit tricky, and this is where the jargon comes up again. On a provider and developer side, you typically interact with you typically interact with 2FA from an OAuth perspective. It's a way of like signing in without using passwords. Like you can log into another service by proxy with another. So Clef, Authy, Duo, they provide these services. Personally, if you want to do this without doing any work at all, Instant 2FA is an amazing service that does this. You just drop a few lines, boom, 2FA for all the support. Secure tokens, numbers, all that jazz. Makes it really straightforward. You could go ahead and visit these websites and get more detail on how that stuff works. That stuff in particular would be OTP. I'm kind of racing through it because this is the part that's probably more important. A lot of 2FA services that we interact with more uses the OTP approach. Just that thing when Google says, oh, pull out your phone and get the number. You're like, okay, cool. And you have 2 seconds and the number changes, and then you're like, oh, now I have to wait and go for another one. That's typically generated using TOTP. The other option is HOTP. Personally, I have not seen many sites use HOTP unless you're working in medicine or something that requires like tight latency. H stands for HMAC based, which is a whole other thing that could be explained, but that's something you would put me to the side to do. TOTP is time-based generation. That's that little circle you'll have. It's like, oh, you have 45 seconds to run to type in a number. How that works is typically using a shared secret, and it computes a new number across a timestamp, usually 30 seconds, some people use 15. And both of these beautiful standards are based on OATH, not to be confused, OAUTH. It's not that hard to get wrong. Oh wait, no, that's too soon. Well, now you know where this is going. So TOTP is more resilient in the fact that it has to ensure that your phone's up to current times. No one can kind of predict where you are, and it relies on the idea that both the client and the provider are using like the right timestamps. If those are off, then you won't be able to log in. HOTP, yeah,